Yeah, let's clear that up. I'm from Kool Herc block.
Oh, wow.
I'm directly from his block. I'm from Sedgwick.
Okay.
Kool Herc, you hit it on. He came here at 12 years old. When he came here at 12 years old, he had no clue. He didn't even want to be a DJ. He wasn't even thinking about being a DJ. He was playing with toys. He said, I hooked up with some Black American kids and I got Black Americanized. They took me through the streets of the Bronx. They taught me the latest slang, the latest dress, the latest haircut. He said, I learned all this from Black American kids. All my friends were Black American. They took me to the first funk break parties, which hip hop didn't have a name yet. It wasn't called hip hop. They took him to DJs like John Brown. And then later on, he learned people like Grandmaster Flowers and a lot of other DJs. That's when he started learning he wanted to be a Black American DJ. He seen the breakdance was already around him. He wanted to be a breakdancer. Mm-hmm. Hip hop already existed. It didn't have a name yet. Right. So he was learning all this from everybody else. When he first decided to want to be a DJ, he started learning from everybody, teach him how to use two turntables that already existed. They were already using two turntables. They was already mixing breaks. Grandmaster Flowers was the #1 DJ of New York City. His name was Grandmaster Flowers, not Flash. Yeah. They all wanted to emulate him because he was the best. Before disco started, he was doing what you call hip hop. It didn't have a name to it. It was blending funk breaks. He opened up for James Brown in 1969 in Yankee Stadium. Right. He was a warm-up DJ for them, and he was a fanatic for James Brown as a teenager.
Now, was Pete DJ Jones around in that time?
Yeah, he came after him. Pete DJ Jones came after him. And they were mostly like doing like R&B and disco at that time. Disco didn't kick into 73. But before that, Grandmaster Flowers was the best. Then you had another DJ called John Brown. That's where Herc learned how to learn the hip hop from. He was going to a club called the Plaza Tunnel. All the gang members, the graffiti writers, they all used to go there. Everybody was breakdancing to James Brown and Jimmy Castor, Aretha Franklin. Yes. They was blending those breaks already. Herc tells you himself, he said, I'm watching everybody break and I want to be down with this. I want to learn this. He wanted to learn how to do the DJ work. Phase 2 will tell you this because Phase 2 taught Herc how to graffiti. Herc was a graffiti writer first. He took Herc around to the different clubs, the Plaza Tunnel, the Puzzle, the Psychedelic Shack, the Factory West. Once he caught that bug about wanting to be a DJ and do the hip hop and the breaking, he became a DJ. You had Smokey and the Smokatrons. That was the DJ before Herc. He had all the B-boys, all the breakers was at his parties first. But when Herc caught a ballroom, he got a ballroom, he rented it out, and he rented it out in a spot where it was neutral. You couldn't go to other hip hop parties because gangs affiliated different cultures in different neighborhoods, so you couldn't just walk in and party and have fun. He had a central spot in a place where he got a spot where everybody could come to and enjoy hip hop. That's how he became big. Yep. And then he started doing what everybody else doing, taking the break beats, mixing them together, and he put them back to back. Where everybody was doing break beats between two records, Herc would add two more. He wasn't good at blending. He wasn't good at mixing. He would just play the records back to back to back. Okay. That was it. Okay. But he wasn't good as everybody else. But he did become the dominant DJ. From 73 to 77, each DJ had their turn. His turn influenced Flash and Bambaataa, who came from his parties. Flash was a B-boy.
Now, right. And Melly Mel was a B-boy.
Yeah, they was all B-boys. They all used to go to Smokey parties first. They all went to Smokey and the Smokatrons. The Smokatrons was a B-boy crew first. They went there first. But when Herc started putting his stuff on and he started joining the bigger parties, they left Smokey and went to Herc's party. And that's when Mel and them was there, Flash was there. They was B-boys. And when they
now, what year we're talking? Well, what year we're talking?
When Herc started?
No, when Smokey and the Smokatrons. And those guys
Smokey started between 72 to 76, and he left. He had to run to the military.
Okay, got it.
And then Herc started 73.
What were the Puerto Ricans doing around that time?
The Puerto Ricans wasn't around like that. You may see one or two, but they wasn't around because the racism between blacks and Puerto Ricans, it was situations at that time. Like the neighborhoods are mostly like all Puerto Rican, all black, or somewhat mixed. And you still had a bunch of Italians running, they had a whole bunch of neighborhoods. So the Puerto Ricans was into their salsa, their merengue, their bachata. They was all into that merengue and salsa mostly. That's what they was into, and they tried to get into disco. They had their own neighborhoods. By 1978, that's when you start seeing young Puerto Rican kids wanting to hang with the black kids, what they call morenos. They wanted to hang with the morenos because it was a different music at the time. They never heard of funk music. They didn't know anything about it. But hanging with their little black friends, That's how they started wanting to learn. Oh, what kind of dance is that? They call it the Moreno dance. They be like, but that's what they called it. But we called it breaking, freestyle, and funk.
Right.
And that when we started.
And by that time, like the Nigga Twins and Clark Kent and Charlie Rock, they had stopped breaking. Yeah, you know about.
I know them personally. Right? I know them personally.
Yeah.
I know all of them. I know Sasa, King Trixie. I know all of them. All the first B-boys. They like 68, 67. They all started in 71.
Yeah.
Phase 2 was a B-boy. He's an original graffiti writer. He was an original. They all back then. Those guys, the Nigga Twins and Charlie Rock, the first B-boy crew was the Zulu Kings. They started in 76. They came from the parties watching A1 B-boy Sasa. That's the first B-boy. They came from watching him and the Nigga Twins and Clark Kent. That's how you get the Zulu Kings, because they went to those parties watching them, so they started to form the Zulu King B-boys with Charlie Rock and them. After them came the Puerto Ricans. The Puerto Ricans started watching the Little Zulu Kings. That's Beaver and them. Beaver's the president of Little Zulu Kings. He started in 77, 78, and he started when everybody else retired. B-boys was played out. The breaking was played out in 77. From 71 to 77, it was being done that whole time. And then originals, they thought it was played out. They went over to something else, like doing the hustle, electric boogie. They moved on to something else. But when the Puerto Ricans found it, they found it when it was already played out. Nobody was doing it anymore except the baby blacks, the baby Little Zulu Kings. That's who inspired them. And that's how you get your rock steadies and your Bronx boys and your Rockwell Associates, all these guys. They came later after the Little Zulu Kings. Charlie Chase, all the first Latin DJs and the first Latin rappers, they came late. They came 77, 78. They all came later. And they all each have a story.
Like whipping those guys, right? Like whipping those guys.
And they tell you, Prince Whip, Charlie Chase, Tito, Disco Wiz, they all tell you it was racism. Puerto Ricans used to get at them like, why you hanging with the Morenos? Why you trying to act like and dress like the Morenos? Why you talking like them? Because they spoke a lot of Spanish back then. Mira this. Then with the blacks is like, yo, why is he here? Why Jose is here? Why he not playing with a salsa band or something? Why he not doing merengue? They said, nah, he cool. He with us. He learning. That's how that went. That's the part they're not telling you. Those are the details. Hip hop didn't have a name and it existed for like 5 to 7 years before a Latino got into it. After them came the whites with Disco Fever. The owner of the Disco Fever was the first white guy that got into hip hop by giving everybody a chance to play at his club, the Disco Fever. His name was Al. Sal Albertino. He opened up Disco Fever. He let blacks play hip hop there. Then came Blondie. She was the second white person. These people all started. That's how they started coming in. First the Latinos, then the whites, and then they started opening the doors for everybody.
Yeah.
It always happened. Even with rock and roll, they try to steal our stuff. Soon we teach people. The same people we teach 50 years later say they was with us or they helped us create it.